So hello everyone, welcome for joining us on this recording I have with me today, my guest is Jim MacDonald. He's joining me from Canada. And are you actually in Quebec, Jim?
Quebec, and yes, in cold Quebec. Yes.
I'm in Quebec, I have to say that right.
Yeah.
Jim
Yeah.
is the founder, developer, inventor of a product called Teksill that we're going to talk about today. And he developed it and started in 2012 and has patents, and he's in stores in Canada, and he's starting to be able to sell it in the United States. And this is a product that homeowners can use, restoration, anybody in the insurance side of things, or restoration professionals, new build contractors, also renovation contractors. So it's really intriguing to me. So I wanted to bring Jim on to talk about it. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you so much. It's a great honor.
Well, it's great to have you. And I've been actually, I think a client sent me your product. So you want to just tell me a little bit about the backstory. So this is let's just say what this product is. Maybe you can explain it. So it's primarily for basements, I believe, right?
Yeah, mostly for basements because basement walls are built directly on the concrete floor. And after a few years, the basement wall framing becomes humid from the humidity comes through a concrete slab. So the main part of it is for basements, but we're starting to use it more and more into around basements or bathroom walls on ground floors, around kitchens. It's starting to be used on ground floors also, but basically it's a wall protection from humidity. And because the wall does not sit in humidity, you have better air quality in your home. So the air doesn't become humid because of this lumber, and all the wall components don't sit in moist areas. So the wall becomes elevated and aerated, and you have a fresh materials all nonstop, all year long.
Yeah, so if you can explain what it is without a picture, and then I'm going to have links in the bottom of this presentation and of this video where you can go to their website and you can look at this. But it's like a stilt almost, a little plastic. I don't know what the
Yeah.
right word is that you would call
Well,
it.
we've had doctors in Quebec nickname it skates. So it's basically like a
Skate.
wall on skates. Yeah. And it's a ventilated sill plate. Instead of the 2x4 on the floor, you have 3/4 of an inch of elevation, and it's a plastic strip that's ventilated. Wall sits on an elevation of 3/4 inch of ventilated plastic, and it creates an airflow under the wall. So it's very stable. It's an elevator. It's like a high heel under a wall, and your wall flooring, stud, and your materials don't sit on the floor, which can be affected by humidity.
Right. And I think what I like about it is that, so in situations, especially in retrofit, I think, or what's appealing to me is that, so the concrete, the wood members are porous, concrete's porous. So if
Yeah.
if the concrete is taken on water, whether usually it's from the outside in some way, it can be from down below, then it actually wicks that water. And I talk about this in a number of my courses by capillary action. It's basically being drawn in, and the inside of our homes are always drier than the outside. And so it's always, the moisture is always going to dry to the inside. And so what this is doing is it's got like little skates. I love that analogy that it's like skates. It's got like multiple blades of skates that are holding up the bottom plate. So the sill plate, bottom plate, that's the bottom piece of wood that's the rest of the wall is built upon. And so it allows a place for channels of water to go through. It's plastic. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a HDPE plastic. It's a very high quality plastic, which was created for repelling water and also for strength. So a basement wall is about 36 pounds per lineal foot, and probably a ground floor wall or on a home is 36 pounds per lineal foot. Studs, insulation, drywall on two sides, about under 30 to 40 pounds per linear foot. But Teksill was designed excessively durable. It can hold 10,000 pounds plus per linear foot. So although now we're not in the building code yet, we're aiming for that, but it's excessively strong to hold up walls and ground floors and upper floors of homes. But yeah.
Yeah, so this is primarily like not inches, like many inches of water. It's how high? 3/4 of an inch?
Well, it's 3/4 of an inch, and we calculate in gallons. Is about 500 to 600 gallons of water on your basement floor, and your walls remain dry. There's no wicking effect. So the elevation is 3/4 inch, and that's about 600 gallons of water on your floor.
Yeah, I think, and that's usually what we see when we see basements that have had, it's been seepage. It's not that much water,
Yeah,
but it's enough that
no,
it's gotten the bottom plates wet.
yeah. As soon as one wall has got a bottom sill plate of wood wet, the 2x4 gets wet, it's almost nearly impossible to dry it fully. The wood that's sitting between the concrete and the floor, whether it has a vapor barrier or not, there's no airspace. So how can you dry it? Teksill now gives you opportunity to dry up the bottom of the wall. Even if you have more than 3/4 of an inch, 2 feet of water, you can still, we've proved through a proof of concept that you can dry a basement in under 20 hours, under 1 day, with 2 feet of water if you have the proper drying equipment. So you don't have to really scrap your walls, because mold particles and mushroom growth is after 48 hours. Teksill can dry a basement under 1 day.
Okay, and so, but you're saying that if it gets wet above the plastic, that you
Yeah,
test
no,
it?
well, let's say in a basement you get 2 feet of water.
Yeah, like
I mean,
2 feet
that's pretty
high.
horrible. Yeah. Teksill is protecting the wall from wicking up to 3/4 of an inch. So if you do happen to have 2 feet, 3 feet of water, sure, your walls get wet, but if you extract the water fast enough and you set in dehumidifiers, blowers, and dryers, you can actually dry your basement fully in under 24 hours with the proper equipment and not have to replace all your wall materials. I know
Did
it's a
you,
big job, but
so-
you have to catch it before have to catch it soon enough that you can dry your basement out.
right, right. Is this perforated at all on the bottom, or if it's solid plastic?
Well, it's really interesting question, because Teksill has the famous legs below it, or skates, and
Yeah.
then the actual 2x4 doesn't sit straight on a piece of plastic. Below the 2x4, it sits on pods or little legs. Between the Teksill has ventilation under the 2x4 and has ventilation underneath the floor material.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. People need to look at the picture really closely. Oh, you
Yeah,
have,
because here's the Teksill. Here's a 2x4. Instead of 2x4 being directly on the cement floor, here's Teksill installed. So you have these skates down below it, but also between the 2x4 and Teksill, there's plenty of drafting and airflow underneath the 2x4. So even if you have 2 feet of water, you'll always get drainage and airflow below the 2x4. So you can
oh,
actually dry out the airspace here and the airspace here.
that was a great idea. So that was where I was a little bit hesitant, because I was like, oh, the plastic's going to hold the water into the wood. But no, you've thought of that.
Yes, yes, we work with really good engineers to maximize the potential, and it could have been built easy by sitting a 2x4 on a flat plastic surface, but we decided to create a 3-dimensional ventilation underneath the actual 2x4. So even though you get 2 feet of water, with a proper drying equipment that restoration companies use, you can dry the complete wall. We've proved it in a laboratory, dry a complete wall under 20 hours. So when a
Wow.
basement gets wet, you're looking at 6 to 9 days of dry time. But Teksill actually has been proven in a laboratory. We can dry the basement in under 1 day.
So the other thing that I like about it is, I'm looking at your picture online, or on one of your presentations I have on another screen here, is that it's also up off the ground. And that's something that I think people can do in any situation, is keep the drywall up off the bottom. They could still cover the edge with a trim of some sort, and that would be kind of a sacrificial piece if it got
Yeah,
wet. But the fact that the drywall, and this is definitely something that is a concept that is affecting a lot of our buildings, that is a little bit more advanced, which is why people kind of overlook it, is this capillary action, where the water is going from cell to cell against gravity. And so if the drywall is too close to the ground, then, or if it is touching, sometimes they have it touching, they just put it down and they're going to attach it to the wall, and they're touching the slab. And
Yeah.
and this is actually forcing it to be higher above your little your clips, which is
Correct.
another good, I think another good thing. Is it just 2x4s? Could you have a 2x6 version?
Well, for now, as a startup, we're trying to be very economical and
Mhm.
smart, and we're starting with 2x4s.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
that's probably
as progression goes, we're getting ready for 2x4 steel stud walls, and next 2x3s. But Teksill is a plastic part that can be, it can be sliced to fit a 2x3 very easily. But we're coming out with a 2x6 and a 2x3 and a steel stud version shortly.
okay, 2x3. Yeah, because there can be cases where you're trying to maximize the room size, because most of the time this
Yeah.
isn't structural. And
Yeah, no, all basement walls
the
usually
house
have
is already
partition.
built, and this is
Yeah,
a finished product.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the steel stud is interesting. So what do you find about steel? Why a lot of people think they don't need this for steel studs?
Yeah, well, so there's a big dilemma there because steel studs are nice and straight and they're fast, but um, to be very construction polite, um, steel studs, it's a U channel sitting on the floor. So that U channel, if it floods above the height of the U channel, which is an inch and a half, it'll basically fill up like a pool, and it's pretty hard to drain out the steel stud base plate because it's a U channel and it'll hold an inch and a half in the water. Sure, it'll drain between the seams of 12 feet, but it takes a while. So
Mhm.
having Teksill below a steel stud is an added plus where it'll also dry out that surface.
So in your experience, so how did you end up doing this? Like, so did you have a personal story related to this
Oh
problem?
yes,
Or,
we
I
were
mean, how did you
actually.
out of the blue just think, oh, this is what I need to make?
Well, it's basically close to that. So I'm an experienced contractor. My dad brought me up in the world of carpentry since I'm 3 years old. So I love what I do. I love construction. I always try to better the situation. We were building a basement in 2012 for a client who bought a home. It was his dream home, and he didn't have it fully inspected. And the home had a 2-inch down slope to it because of settling to the ground. We were rebuilding his basement due to
So it
water
wasn't a new
infiltration.
house. You were rebuilding it?
Yeah, it was a used home, and he bought it to turn into his dream home for him and his family. And he wanted to put in a basement that's suitable for 2 sons, elderly sons, a laundry room, exercise room. And we were saying to ourselves, but how are we going to turn this basement into a very high-end basement in a very expensive part of Montreal, Quebec, and that he could sustain, potential water infiltrations from his already settled foundation, his crooked foundation. So in that basement in the year of 2012, when we were building, I said, gosh, if I build a prototype that if there's a flood and he can not waste all his investment of construction materials, time and labor installed, then he would have a home basement built. He would have all the renovations and construction materials elevated off the ground, and that if there is water, he was prone to water because his foundation was already defective. If I was to design something that would work well, then his investment, there was a large sum that he invested in his basement, and um, I took it to heart where if all this money invested, how could I protect this client from having one flood, having a $30,000 to $40,000 damage from one flood, and inventing this product, trying a prototype in his basement, worked so well that he's never had a water problem. And when I go into his basement, I went in his basement 6 months ago, from 2012 to 6 months ago. It's so dry that the lumber does not sit. All his wall system does not sit on the concrete slab. His basement remains very dry. His air quality in the basement is so clean because lumber doesn't get humid. Since then, luckily, he's never had a flood, but his investment with our Teksill created a very dry basement where he doesn't get the basement humid smell.
So you're like in the middle of a project and you just kind of how do you come up with a prototype? Was it built differently when it was not when it was an on the fly on a job site? and then
Yeah,
you had to decide how to make something reproducible. I'm just really curious as an inventor, like how does somebody go from standing there, and because I've been there, like you stand there and you're going like, okay, we need something. What could we use that we already have? And so I'm just curious, and what did you use originally before you came up with, because obviously this is something that you had manufactured.
well, originally you asked quite a historical question because originally you build the walls as they are, you follow the market products as they are. But
Yeah.
I said to myself, how can I protect my client? A huge investment, and how can I better their situation? I went into history, and there's one famous human being that said words that were pretty that retained my thoughts many times. Mr. Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. So I tried to imagine, how can I protect this basement? I imagined water in this guy's basement. He was investing over $70,000 of basement renovation. How can I protect this guy's basement? So I imagined, how can I protect this guy's basement with 3/4 inches of water? And that's where I developed the prototype
Was it plastic? Like how did you make one of these things? Like,
well, the original
too much of a
text, the
secret that
original,
you can't tell me, but
no, it's
you know
not.
what I'm saying
Okay,
is you don't this is something you're making in a factory, right?
yeah, gosh, you got a great question. So I'm going to tell you the story on that one. So Teksill originally was called Sillvent, because we're looking at the sill, always a sill plate of the wall. Originally we call it Sillvent, but we had an obstruction on our name from a very famous, very high valued American investor. So he prevented us from using the word Sillvent because he's using it in masonry. He uses Sillvent, we were Sillvent. So the original product actually was, you're going to say I'm nuts. We used Coroplast materials, and it was, the real estate signs, Coroplast.
Yeah, they're like,
folded.
it's like a corrugated plastic kind of.
Exactly. So I used the products available in the store, and I used that under the walls, and it created a 3/8 of an inch elevation, and air flowed the bottom of the walls. So it was a great prototype. We used it on multiple basements to create the effect of airflow into the walls, stop the wicking effect. And then from there, we developed with plastic engineers how to better the situation. So we took the Coroplast model and we turned into a really high-end, ventilated plastic with famous skates down below it,
Yeah, and you're
So
higher now because you said you were like 3/8,
3/8 of an inch.
which isn't very high.
No, it was about 300 gallons in the basement. Now, Teksill can handle between 600 to 650 gallons of water before the walls start to wick.
Yeah, no, this is pretty interesting. And
And,
so is
and,
it,
and to answer your question, gave me a smile because since bringing the product to stores, we've had, handy people say, hey, Jim, I could have invented your product because I used to use hockey pucks under the walls. Another guy said, I used to use bricks under the walls to elevate the wall from moisture. So,
so people have been doing it. I mean, it's a really
yeah,
good idea. It's kind of like one of those where you're like, okay, why has nobody done this?
yeah. And, we designed it so it slides on like a sock. It's like there's nothing to it.
Yeah.
You slide on the 2x4. You don't need screws or anything, and it holds on.
Yeah, no, I think it's really, really interesting. I also am intrigued by the potential of whether you could, I don't know how you would do this though. If there was a way, and maybe you do it with another product that's more just like a vented core event kind of a product or something like that. Because the whole idea of a rain screen where, we use it on the exterior walls for siding, allows for the materials to dry from behind. And so I have kind of a thought of when the walls, because it's kind of a challenge that when you put the drywall on the exterior walls, it is possible that you trap moisture back there. And plastic is not the solution, everyone. So a layer of vapor barrier is not the solution. That's probably another topic. But I'm curious, when you use this on an exterior wall, my wheels are turning, and I'm trying to think of what could you do at the top You just need some sort of spacer, or you leave it, maybe use a wood spacers or something, because it doesn't matter. It's not going to get wet up there probably. You just need to have an air, an air column to go through, so the natural convection forces of the, air movement can dry behind there. There could be air movement behind there, which means you have to have and I always tell this, you have to have an in and an out. Just an in doesn't dry anything. You gotta have an in and out.
You mentioned convection, and there's a very famous HGTV star who we introduced in Teksill, and he's the one who came back with the word convection. Teksill dries with convection, airflow, and he's a blonde, very famous HGTV
I don't know. I don't watch TV very much, but I
and
may know
so
him. I may know who he is, but it's a technical term in architecture as well.
Yeah. But the convection, that's what Teksill does. It dries with convection, because even if, let's say there's a quarter inch of water or an inch of water, the water retracts itself naturally through the slab or our drain hole, and then the convection dries the moisture under the walls, So convection really, as you're talking about, even through a wall or through an attic area, convection will dry all lumbers,
Yeah, and I think people still have to probably run dehumidifiers, and definitely in basements just from condensation. But yeah, I think people are overly concerned about wood, and I actually have a history with the wood industry for about 5 years as a senior technical director helping professionals. And what was really interesting about it is it can take on moisture and release it over and over again and really have no effect on the wood itself within a certain range. When we get out of that range is when we have problems. If we get out of that range and we hold it out of that range for a while. But on a job site, it can rain, but the key though is letting it dry and giving it the ability to dry, which is something that this product, and what I really like is how the wood is off the plastic, because my initial thought was that it wasn't. So I'm actually really excited about that part.
We actually, there's little pods underneath. There's 3 rows of pods where the wood sits on, and it creates an 1/8 of an inch airflow. And even the bottom is created as an umbrella where the water can run off between the sandwich of the wood and the plastic. So we want to make sure that if there was more than 3/4 of an inch, the area under the 2x4 would not be moisture trapping. It would drain.
Yeah. And that is a place where I see mold, is anywhere where you have 2 materials next to each other, even 2 pieces of wood, unfortunately. So like sistered next to each other, that it's hard for that area to dry. And definitely in that space between the sill, the bottom plate, whatever you want to call it, and what it's sitting on the concrete. Now, how are you attaching this to the slab? How do you recommend so it doesn't slide back and forth?
And that's a very good question. Practically, we can do today. A lot of people are using the traditional Tapcon screws, the blue hard screws. You're screwing down and you're screwing into concrete. It's so resistant; it can resist even cold weather ramset nails right through the plastic and the lumber. So it's very strong. Can handle a lot of different attachments, and I like your question, because apart from attaching it and being very, very resilient in strength, you can screw through it, you can nail through it, and it'll go through the wood and the plastic. It's so resistant that we kept in mind that even earthquake movement, the Teksill skates are so stable that the movement even will withstand, vibrations and movements. It's very strong.
So do you put it all is it a sandwich? Do you just slap the plastic on, and is that the installation process? And then you would go through the wood and put your bottom plate down and go from that would be the process?
Yeah, 2 different ways. You can either build all your
build the wall and set the wall up.
Yeah, there's 2 ways to do it. So you either build all your sill plates around the basement and then build your 2x4s on your sill plates that are already in place. Or some people are setting their sill plates into place with Teksill and a 2x4, and then they're building a new wall and they're dropping it right on top of their existing sill plate, wood installed with Teksill. Yeah, there's a couple of ways to do it.
I have my wheels turning for even my house, because we have some areas that are unfinished that we're thinking about having finished. And I have radiant floors though. So we were going to glue the bottom plate to the floor, but what can we do?
You're intriguing me so much there. So, gosh,
Good.
so Teksill, I call Teksill as a brother and a sister. We have Teksill Guide for retrofitting. That if you have an existing basement, you get a flood, you cut out 2 feet of drywall around your basement, you take out the insulation out, the wet drywall. You can retrofit your basement existing walls by cutting out the sill plate with the Teksill Guide, and you don't have to take all your walls out. So
Wait, what's a Teksill guide? Is it a tool?
this is the Teksill Guide. Okay, it's a guide. It actually slips onto the 2x4. All right, and if you when you come up to your stud, here's your wall, here's your stud, and this is installed on a concrete. So you slide your Teksill Guide, you pass your Sawzall blade on top of the guide, you slice the wall, then you actually end up cutting the wall plate, which is holding up drywall, and then you can retract the old sill plate, and then your 2x4 has been cut high enough that you could insert the Teksill and rescrew your wall to it. So that's Teksill Guide. It's retrofitting a basement that's been flooded and installing Teksill instead, and you don't have to replace all the walls. So that's
like a
one
template,
little brother.
a cutting template, which is another good idea.
Yeah. So secondly, your great question of the concrete floor that has water pipes. So you don't want to screw in there or nail into it, right?
Yeah, you basically, it's like nobody putting any nails in this floor or screws in this floor. Once we've got it poured.
So we've started several homes in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, with this concept, and not attaching a wall in a basement without attaching the wall to the floor is a tricky concept. So we've came up with Teksill's little brother, Teksill Guide, and Teksill's little sister, which is Teksill Block. Teksill Block is a solid block of wood, solid block of Teksill plastic, which is glued down to the concrete floor a day before you build your walls. You put your chalk lines around your basement. You glue your Teksill blocks at every 2 feet. And then the next day, you can actually screw your wood sill plate to the Teksill plastic, which is glued to your concrete. And when you screw your wood sill plate to your Teksill block plastic, you're only screwing into the Teksill block and not the concrete slab. So you're building a basement wall frame and system on Teksill blocks instead of screwing onto the concrete slab, leaving the slab as it is, because a Teksill block is glued to your concrete slab. A little bit hard to explain, but it's a Teksill plastic block that is the height of Teksill. It takes the remainder of the space, and you screw your wood stud to this plastic thickness. So you don't have to screw into the concrete floors anymore with Teksill block. It's a bit more planning because you have to do it a day ahead, glue your blocks down, line up all your walls, and then the next day you have all these blocks installed, and you start putting your sill plates on these blocks with Teksill in between it. And you actually don't screw into the concrete floor, you screw into the 3/4 inch Teksill block. Hard to explain on the it's the next we're under packing development, so it's not on the site yet, but it's coming next. Very good question.
Well, you guys have thought of everything, so I'm very impressed. So how can people buy this stuff? It's now, you said it's in stores in Canada. Is it all over in Canada? Just in the eastern side? Where do people find it? Because they're going to be watching this and going, "That's cool."
Yeah, so we started in December 2019, and then a not very friendly bacteria came and was not nice to the complete world, Mr. and Mrs. COVID, so it didn't help Teksill get onto the economy very well. So we're in about 12 to 13 Montreal local stores. We're going across Canada with all the big box stores, and presently we're in the U.S. and Ohio. We have a distribution. Our manufacturer, which in Canada, is partnered with a U.S. manufacturer, so we are half Canadian, half U.S. So we are in the U.S. in Ohio. We have we're starting to distribute through on our internet site, we have a company called LM Built Right who distributes our product in the US. We're looking for awesome partners who are interested in helping us go across the US. But so far we are in a distribution outfit. It's called LM Built Right. They're on an internet site. We can start selling across the US, even though Mr. and Ms. COVID are giving us a hard time. We're getting there, but we're very anxious to be across all the shelves in the US.
Okay, so do you have product in the US now?
Absolutely. We have 4 pallets of Teksill just waiting and sitting for our US
Okay.
client.
And
Yeah.
in Canada, in BC, do they can they get it in BC, or do they have to get it from across Canada? Can you guys ship across Canada? No problem.
Absolutely. We had the wonderful opportunity to ship to one of your wonderful clients who asked us for product in the area of California, Hollywood. We shipped them a few boxes of Teksill because they want to install it in one of their projects. So we will do whatever we have to do, and especially to accommodate our American brothers and sisters, we'll do whatever we have to do. That's without a doubt.
I just want, because I have clients in Canada too, and I do have people that will be watching this from Australia probably and other places in the EU. UK has a big problem. I don't know how many basements they have. I think they do have them in Australia.
In the UK, in the last 10 years, they've given out about 6,000 basement building permits. And so they're starting to build big basements in UK. They go down 2 and 3 floors. So going down that deep. Yeah. So we're in communication with the UK in London to try and set up, availability. So.
Okay. So, and what kind of a price point does this add to just in general? Obviously, every kind of every time we convert the money, we get something different. But is there like is it a percentage if that people can count on?
You've got to be very smart today to keep your product not only well built, but a smart product. And we made sure that the money part was as smart as the build. So your average home, if you're spending, let's say $20,000, $30,000 to build a basement, Teksill percentage factor comes at about 2 or 3% the cost of building a basement. It's minimal for, let's say, your average basement. It's about $400 of products to actually insert under your walls. If your basement's costing you $20,000, $30,000, the $400 is a minimal cost comparative to the long-term effect of moisture smells and or one flood. We have homes in Quebec, Canada that have had up to 7 or 8 floods in 8 to 10 years. They never replaced their wall materials because Teksill drained, ventilated all the moisture. And this is where the minimum investment of Teksill can sustain so much water damage and humidity problems. So 2 or 3% is the cost of Teksill per your average basement.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. Is there anything else that that we should know? What's your website? You can tell us what it is.
It's TEKSILL.com, Teksill.com. And we're very happy to be again, joining our American family, and we've got a few other ones cooking up, getting ready to go, so to improve the house situation.
Oh, good. Well, I can't wait to hear about it. So we'll stop for now. I'm really grateful to have you on to talk about your story and your product. Congratulations on a good idea and taking the initiative to actually act on it, which is what a lot of us need a little kick to do sometimes. But it seems so obvious as a solution, and you've got it and you're ready to go. And so I think there is definitely a use for it that I'm excited. So I'm happy to share this. And so thanks.
My son spent a lot of time in the US as a Canadian. And when he saw the product Teksill in our renovation or construction builds, he said, "Dad, this thing is going to work. It's awesome. Let's push to get it done." So we're keeping going because we know it's going to help a lot of people, and that's primary is to help a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I congratulations, because I do think it's a good product.
Thank you so much.
I don't bring on people to talk about stuff that I don't think is cool, and I'm definitely a fan of creative solutions and engineering solutions and just good ideas. So thanks again for joining me. For anyone who wants to contact Jim or check out this product, you can start at his website, teksill.com, and we'll have the link below this video, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget.
Thank you. A
Like
huge honor. Keep your basement dry. Okay.